Welcome to Doctors at Work. My name's Matt Daniel and this podcast is about doctors' careers. It's part of my mission to help other doctors create successful and meaningful careers. And today we're talking about career reinvention after you turn 50. Now all of us change over time and the choices that we made in our 20s and how we worked in our 20s may no longer suit. In this episode, Denise tells me that it's not unusual to look for alterations in our working lives. Now that might be small moves or it may be more radical ones. Having a very clear understanding of what matters to you is important, and sometimes really good hints come from those early childhood experiences. Change requires networking, it takes time and it's hard work, and the ideal job might not yet exist. You might have to create it yourself. Making a decision about how much money you and your family need is important too, and radical moves are best done from a position of strength. Welcome, Denise. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
It's always a difficult question. It's about where do you start? How far do you go back, especially when you're over 60 like me? But I think what's most important is like, where am I now? And I gained my doctorate 2 years ago at 64. And I spend most of my time as a career coach, working with people of all ages, predominantly with, or more of them seem to be like 16 to 21, and also 50 plus. And during lockdown, I bought a 4-acre wood. And I have this huge connection with nature, spend a lot of time there. So when people say, so what do you do? And it's, well, you know, there's the business side of me. But what I actually feel is way more important is me, who's the woodland owner, who is, you know, looking after a wood for the greater good, because it's going to be there a long time after I'm gone.
I have to say, that sounds absolutely fantastic. I'm going to say, should we change topic and talk about woodland? But no, we're here to talk about careers over 50. So let's not deviate, although that might be another podcast idea, isn't it? But let's talk about careers over 50 then. So what do we know about careers over 50?
There is so much in the press about ageism and how difficult it is to get a job over 50. I wrote the book, Find Work at 50 Plus, and was commissioned to write that one because of the work I've been doing and other things. And an awful lot of the struggles that people have, it's in their head. You know, they think they're too old. They think there's going to be a problem. So what happens? They have a problem. I have many of my clients and they've changed, made radical career changes. They've got the promotion and they're 50 plus, 60 plus. But all we hear elsewhere is the struggles that people have. The most important thing is to know who you are, what you can offer, and to just keep a bit up to date, because you don't want to be like somebody who's stuck in the 1990s and doesn't really understand the new stuff that's going on. So you just have to use the right words and to show that you keep your skills up to date as well. Because there's no point being, for example, and one of my clients, he'd been a marketing director and he got made redundant, but he'd never got a single marketing qualification. He didn't need to because he'd worked his way up. He needed to once he wanted to get another job. And that was a big eye-opener for him about he'd relied on past laurels and never kept any skills up to date.
Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in hearing a bit more about what changes. And you know 50 kind of, it sounds like a very artificial distinction, doesn't it? And I turned 50 last year, so it's probably a topic close to my heart. I know sort of people watching are going to say, you don't look a day over 40, and they would be right, Denise, of course, but I am actually 50 with an awful lot of moisturizer and plastic surgery and Botox. And I think in medicine it's probably, I mean, people probably wouldn't be made redundant. So I think that is something that I think is a challenge for us. But I wonder if people get a bit staid, or, you know, people do sort of something and it's the same, and people maybe get a bit bored, or there's a yearning for change, or maybe sort of people evaluate and say, you know, what am I doing with my life? So how does that show up in that sort of 50 or thereabouts?
Absolutely. And it could be because, you know, you're an empty nester and the children have gone, or your children are choosing a university and you're thinking about, why did I do medicine? Because my biggest client groups used to be doctors and lawyers, because good professions. I mean, why would you not go and study that if that was given you as an option? And then people begin to think this isn't really me, or it might have been me then and it's not me now. So where am I going? What is it that I really want to do? So that's time to go back and to reflect and to think about what's most important. The problem is when people are in higher paid careers is they don't want to go back and earn 25 or 30,000 on a job, not when they've been earning six figures. So you've got that challenge about what you're weighing up. Am I going to go for a radical change, or am I going to go for something that's a bit different? So I've had a doctor who moved into consultancy, one of the big four, working in the healthcare side. So I've had one who went, well, this is clearly not earning a lot of money, who went off and did like VSO type work. And then came back re-energized to work in a completely different way. But it is important to think about how important is money to you. And money is not my driver. It's other things but like, I don't have a mortgage. I don't have to, my kids are like doing their own thing now. And it's like the bank of mum has stopped now. But I think that's one of the things that people first need to think about. How much money do I need to earn rather than do I want to earn? Because if you want to still keep earning, then you may need to, your options are smaller than, if you can think about, I could do anything. What is it that will really bring me joy and meaning? And that's a question I ask a lot of people. And they always want to go away, almost always, oh, I need to go away and think about that, because they don't actually know. Because people have stopped thinking about, but what's important to me, it's often about the next promotion or the status, and status is often a very big thing for people until it's not. Yeah.
Let's just go through those things, because there's so much that you said in there that really resonates. So I think the first one, let's start with money, because I think you're absolutely right that I know that this strikes about finances, but even despite that, we are well paid as a profession, and for a doctor to do almost anything else is likely to be a significant pay cut, isn't it? That's just reality, or at least to start off with. Yeah. So I mean, how does one negotiate that? So I say, okay, I'm not happy, or I want to do something different, or I'm a bit bored, but equally, there's the money and the elephant in the room. So how do we deal with that?
Yeah, because obviously there's lots of other things to think about. But if we're thinking about money, one of the ways when I work with my clients is to let's just forget about money and let's just think about what else you can do. And take money out of it completely. And sometimes it's ideas that come out of their head. Sometimes it comes out through our discussion. I'll often use ability battery, this thing called the Highlands Ability Battery, because that will identify careers that match people's underlying ability. And that's quite useful because you've then got some objective data, and then you can look into the things. Indeed, one doctor, it was like, well, I always wanted to be an architect. And then he looked into that, and it was all going to be way too difficult because of the education, everything. I wouldn't suggest this to everybody, but his marriage broke down. And for him, going off and studying again, it's like, now I'm rethinking my life. But for other people, you need to understand about, well, how much are the careers? And if you're going to start again, well, what's going to be like the entry level? But you're not starting like a 21-year-old. You're starting as possibly a 50-year-old with 25 years work experience. So you can fast track where you head to. And there might be an opportunity between what you'd really like to do and what you're doing now, which is utilizing your background. So it makes you more unique, it's unusual. And then you have to have conversations with people, because you're never going to get this job by applying for something that you see. You've got to network your way into it.
So tell me a bit more about this idea that there won't be a job that you'll apply, you have to create it, or you have to network for it.
Because so much now of jobs are advertised, and it's all done by algorithms. They have this thing called ATS. Goodness, I've forgotten. Well, tracking software, I think it's automatic, but I've used the three letters for so many years, I've forgotten what it stands for. But what it is doing is you have to match up against the job you're going for. And in fact, I've got a client coming in later, and I was just matching up her CV against the job ad she wants to go for, and she matches up 20%. I mean, her CV really needs a lot of work done to it, but you have to hit the right keywords. And if you don't match, you're a bit unusual in your background. You got your degree late, perhaps, for a particular person. The software's not going to pick you up. So you need to be seen by a person, or you need your CV to be seen by a person. And the best way to do that is through contact. Because, you know, if I wanted to do a job similar to what you're doing now, I could go in cold, and indeed you would do as much research as you can to find out. So you're not going in asking silly questions, but then you talk to somebody and it's like, well, I've done all this online research, but now I want to, you know, I want to go into medical admin as a sort of, you know, a non-clinical director level. So how am I going to make the move, and what do I need to emphasize, and where are my gaps? Do I need to go and do an MBA, or maybe I can go to Henley and do a short course, you know? So it's like, and getting advice from somebody who's currently doing the work means that you can, you know, you're just getting a really good view rather than going off and talking to a recruiter, or indeed, as I said, your CV just going into this black hole. And then the more senior we are, often the more we've earned, the harder it is to get that job. Because if you think of jobs like a pyramid, if you want to be a customer service assistant, there's loads of them. If you want to be director of customer services, there's very few of them. So it's much harder to make that leap.
So there's something there, you know, when you're 50 or thereabouts, that there's a range of experiences. A lot of it is very likely to be relevant to whatever sideways, sort of a downwards or upwards move you might make, but there won't be a job advert out there probably, or even if there is, you know, sort of you might not have the perfect credentials for it. So it's about creating those connections and crafting the kind of job that you want as well. So that's very different to the mentality that says I'm going to search for jobs and I'm going to apply, isn't it? Because maybe I think most of us think, how do I get a job? Well, you know, I go on NHS jobs or whatever else, and there's a job advertised, I apply for it. But what you've said is very totally different to that mentality.
And something I've done that I think is, I'm not sure, I think I made it up. I don't think I got it from anyone else, is imagine that you're like a plant in the garden centre, you know, and it gives you all the things, you know, you need plenty of sun and different things. So if you think about what is it that you say you were going to tell, or the listener is thinking about doing this is all the things that you want, you know. I want something that's within easy travel distance to home, that's flexible, that does pay me a certain amount of money, that utilizes these different skills. These are all the things that I can offer. These are all the things that I want. And then you just want somebody to pick you to pick up this plan and go like, you'd be perfect for this job. Now, you need to get the word out there. And what I've had some of my clients do is to send that to people that they know. You know, this is who I am. This is what I'm looking for. What would you suggest? And it's been really interesting what people come up with. And indeed, sometimes I've done it with my Amazing People newsletter, which is, I say, well, look, I'll just put it in the newsletter, because these are people that don't know, all they know about you is what you've written. And so they're not coming with any preconceived ideas because they're your cousin or your best friend from university. And, you know, I mean, my clients don't always like what people suggest. But, you know, but they've got some, and they can then spark them into something else. Because otherwise, if you just look for a job ad, you're very constrained by this is what's on offer. Whereas there might be things being considered that hasn't actually appeared as a job ad. Indeed, it's not even on their radar. But once you start saying them things, actually, you know, there's this person, you know, and he was head clinical lead here, and he's done this and he's done that, and he spent this time in Africa. You know, I can see how that could work.
Yeah, yeah. You also said that one of the things that you've experienced is that people might have made career decisions when they were 16, and then, you know, you get to the age of 50 and maybe you're a different person and you value different things. So can you tell me a little bit more about how we as humans change during our lifespan?
Well, I think when we're younger, many of us are heavily influenced by our parents and our peer group. And in many cases, and in many of the people that will move on to go into medicine, it's a really good job, and it's either medicine or law. You need to go and do something like that, and you haven't really thought as what's driving you. People also make decisions on the basis of how much salary that they're going to earn. And it's like, well, I can see my career progression and I can know what I want to do. And I know I really like, art or music or literature, but I can't quite see the path in that. And I don't think I'm going to be a professional musician. And I think, it's going to be a bit precarious, etc. Then it's like the voice in our head gets a bit stronger. And it's like, but you wanted to be a musician. You wanted to do art. You wanted to study ancient history. And the voice gets a bit stronger. And then we think, particularly when a friend or somebody that we know has had, a serious life-changing illness or indeed died. And then it's like, but life is finite. I'm not going to live forever. Do I really want to, reach 75 and I've got all this money in the bank and everybody will say I've been successful. Well, I never did that thing I want. I never wrote that novel. I never really got deep into Greek literature or whatever it happens to be. And so a lot of people don't listen to the voice, or they chuck it to the back of their head and go, that's stupid. But there are people out there who are thinking, if not now, when? And sometimes that voice doesn't strike you at 50, but it strikes you in your mid-60s, whenever age you can start taking your pension. Because at that point, well, suddenly you've got your own personal pension, you've got the state pension, and the need to earn money drops because, you may have a quite significant sum coming in, and then you can think, this is what I really want to do. And it might be to study and be a hobby, but it can equally be, but I want to set up, I want to set up a charity, I want to set up a not-for-profit venture. And I want to maybe, go out to Africa and do some work out there on, birth control or sexual health or something. So it could be that it's something that's still linked to where you've been, but you're just segueing into something that just strikes more to your values. Because our values do change as we age.
Mm-hmm. So how do people balance that kind of that sideways segue that you talked about? So it's not about that I don't like medicine, I want to leave medicine, I like medicine, I want to stay in medicine, but there's this other thing that I've always wanted. Let's use that music for an example. I like my career in medicine, and I've also liked music, but I never did anything about it. So how do people marry two things together?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to use an example from a different profession because it's a real person rather than me making something up. And this chap was a solicitor. He was partner, never wants to do it. His dad had said it's a good job, as had his uncle and his aunties and everyone else. But he really wants to do art. But how on earth could he manage it? And he moved to work in a 3-day week, which was unheard of. And so I had to work with him about how he was going to present the case as to why he should do a 3-day week. And he went to 4 days and then 3. And every week, he would do something different because he didn't know what he wanted to do. So one week it was to do something about photography, and the next week it was to do something about collage. And he was finding all these different short courses that he could do. And that satisfied him. So that met his need. And he got in touch actually a few years back. And he's carrying on with the 3 days a week working. But he has one day that's totally for his art, another day that he does other things that interest him. And then he has the weekend that he can spend with his family. So he's moved to a more flexible life, still earning a good salary, but there's space for other things. So that's a really nice way for people to work. And, I'm doing quite a lot now with people retiring. And as they sort of move into retirement, to move to a part-time working and what they're doing now as they introduce other things into their life, and gradually they'll be doing the other things and not the job. But that's in many years to come in some cases.
So it's not about all of nothing. It's not that you have to do this or you have to do that. It's at least in that example, it's perfectly possible to combine several loves in your life, into a career, a timeline that all hangs together.
Yeah, it is. And something that's really useful to do is to, I'm being artistic now, but I guess you could do it in different ways, but to draw a picture or just to find images, on Google and stick them, you can do it that way, of how your ideal life would be. And it probably would still include you with your profession, but maybe it's just not so much of it, or in a different slant. But when I get people to do that, and there's lots of pictures, because I like to use real examples rather than to make stuff up. And all her pictures, yes, indeed, this was a director of a charity, and all the pictures were of nature and animals. And it's like, do you realise what you've done? And she said it was only when I came to put them all together that I realised she's off on safari at the moment. And she's thinking about, well, what can she do with, I don't know, Battersea Dogs Home or something? She's beginning to explore what are the opportunities that she can do, because she's very good at the certain aspects of her work that would make her, lots of organisations want her because of things that she can offer around funding and getting funding. So there's things that people can do, but we need to get the bit in our head that we need to allow ourselves to be open to new things, because otherwise, and I was working with somebody very different profession, but it's like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I'm beginning to get a bit frustrated with him. I'm going like, if you say you can't do it one more time, then I don't honestly understand why you're paying to work with me, because I'm helping you to expand your horizon and you're not even looking into it. You're just saying, but I'm this, and that's not going to happen. So I've sent him away, and after our session a couple of weeks back, I said, look, I just want you to explore them. I want you to just sort of leave that head that says everything's too difficult for you and just see what you come up with. And if you come up with nothing and you don't want to come back to me again, that's fine. But you need to go there with an open mind, because otherwise we're just going to say, you're not going to get anywhere. And then you're going to get to 90 and you're going to, I probably should have listened to Denise 30 or 40 years ago. It was a bit late then.
I hope you're enjoying the show. Please click subscribe so you'll be notified when new episodes become available. This podcast is part of my mission to help doctors create successful and meaningful careers. You can be part of that mission too by forwarding this show to one person who you think might benefit from listening. Thank you. Now on with the show. If I think of my own career, and one of the things that for me has been really key has been identifying what really matters to me. And for me that is people developing, and what I've done in my career is I do a range of different things, but majority of that, other than my clinical practice, hangs around the idea of developing people, and it's the same golden thread, but there's different ways that I achieve it in different roles. And you also talked about the person with art didn't know what to do, and you said people don't know what gives them joy, what gives them meaning. So there'll be people listening and sort of say, but like, how do I figure out what it is that I want to do?
So there's lots and lots of different techniques and exercises that people can do. And one of them is to go back to childhood. Before we ever thought about careers, what is it that we enjoy doing? And one of the things I enjoyed doing when I was much younger was playing with my Lego and my farm animals. And I was always making schools or hospitals and having all these little stories around that. And I think the whole thing about organising and is something that I've always done. So there was that. I've always liked writing stories. I used to write poetry and create little newspapers, again, before I was 11, and I've written 8 books now. So that, you know, I can look back and chart it. And I think that's a useful time for people to think back. And the things that they enjoyed doing. I enjoyed laying in the sun with, you know, and doing things with dandelions and things, and, you know, and back into nature as well. So I think that's a really good way, is to think about that. I mean, on my website, people could get a list of, you know, every possible activity from astronomy to zookeeper. You know, there's masses and masses of them. I think there's 500. But I'm less keen on getting people to look. I mean, a list is fine for inspiration, but it's a bit like choosing your values by, yeah, I'll have one of this, I'll have one of that. It's more important if you can just sort of like think about what's going on. And I spoke earlier about having the wood. And I think that when we take ourselves away from our work, away from sitting in front of our computer, away from all this technology, and actually go for a walk out in nature and just allow any thoughts to come into our head, I think that's a really good way. You need to just change your environment, because it helps you. I think that's why being on holiday is often a really good time for us to think about, what is it I really want to do? Because we're not being pressurized by the job or the household tasks. So keep a notebook, you know, either on your phone or ideally a proper paper, you know, little notebook that you can keep in your bag. And as you get any ideas or any thoughts, or you're flicking through the Sunday Times, and which is the supplement that you're drawn to most of all, and you go into a bookstore, and that could be it. You know, you go into a bookstore, you've got 15 minutes and you've got to like choose the right section. So you're whizzing around and it's like, I'm just reading all the astrology books or the astronomy books, or the, you know, or the whatever. So there's lots of different techniques that you can use to help find ideas. But I do think one of the best is to go back to when you were 5 or 7 or 9, before you start thinking about, before you get to big school, really.
So the other thing then is, let's say that somebody gets to the stage and they identify, you know, what gives them joy, you know, and what gives them meaning. So, and then they say, well, okay, you know, like what next? So what's the next step? You know, let's sort of say you're a 50-year-old, you know, you've identified that, you know, what gives you joy is art, and or music, and you want to bring that into your life. And let's kind of say, let's maybe it's something that you want to bring into your life as a paid career. You know, not necessarily sort of you're not looking for very highly paid work, but let's say you've identified something and you want to earn some income from that, but people have no idea how where do I even start with that?
I have a friend, consultant, and he was a bit burnt out, really. He started working with a painter decorator, and I mean, he's gone back to consultancy now, but he enjoyed that because he enjoyed the satisfaction of painting the room and it was done, and he was very accurate, not like me, a bit slapdash. So that was something. And I think he probably met a man in a pub and found somebody that way. But it's getting the word out there. If you know what it is that you really want to do, then it's find somebody that will take you on. There's all this thing about being an intern. So one of the great ways is, you know, if you think, well, maybe I'd like to be a painter and decorator, maybe I'd like to be an interior designer, go and find, let's use interior designer as an example, because it's quite extreme from medicine. But, you know, you want to be an interior designer, so go and find an interior designer and talk to them. First of all, you do all your research online, then you find people to talk to, then you find people that you could go and shadow for a day or a week. But you're better off choosing somebody. I live in Cheltenham. So if I started saying I wanted to shadow somebody in Cheltenham, and most of them work for themselves, they might get a bit concerned that I'd be after stealing their business. So they'd be less likely to talk. But my mum lives in Knutsford in Cheshire. So if I went up and stayed with her and started talking to people up in Knutsford, and my sister lives down in Cornwall. So doing it that way, they're not going to feel a bit cautious about sharing things, because like you know, you're 200 miles away. You're not going to be stealing their customers. So that's a great way. Do a couple of shadow for a day, and then it could be take a week's holiday and go and work with them for a week as an intern. Maybe you are washing brushes and making the tea, but you're getting a good feel, because I think we need to do that as we're moving forward. We need to think, find stuff online, find a bit more, shadow. And it all takes time. I mean, people think that they can change careers and it's like you're doing this on, the 1st of March and by the 1st of April, you're gonna have another job. No, it could take months, it could take a year. It takes time. And that's the other thing. People get fed up. People think it's going to be an easy fix. And it's like, oh, this is all just too difficult. I give up. So I'm always telling people it's hard going. Have you really got the resilience to go for it? And if I'm unsure, then it's like, I don't think we're looking for a radical move. I think we're looking for something just toying around with what you currently do. Because I don't think they're going to want to put the effort in to make this major move.
And I wonder how many people get stuck at that stage because number one, they just don't want to go and put themselves out there because, because that's, I think for a lot of people, that'll be terrifying, the idea of going on social media or Facebook or, finding these people and approaching them from cold. Certainly, I think for a lot of doctors, that would be terrifying. Problem number one. And problem number two is that it's hard work. And I think sort of one of the challenges that I see is, you do sort of sometimes see people that are promising easy career changes, and there's this I won't name any industries, but people say, well, you could just walk into this industry, yeah. And I'm kind of thinking, okay, because the people that I know that have gone to that industry did not just walk into that industry, yeah. But sort of there are kind of some perceptions, oh yeah, you should just easily get a job there. They'd be lucky to have you. And I'm kind of thinking, yeah, right. Sort of, you have to be really something quite special and work very hard and maybe people are not prepared to put themselves out there, number one, and people are not prepared for the fact that it's going to be a long journey and it's going to be a fair bit of work.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And I think people need to be aware of that. And I think sometimes I think we just need to think, maybe the time's not right. Maybe I'm thinking of making this radical change, but I just want my next birthday to come by. So I've got another year's, pension contribution, or I want to wait until something's happened in my personal life. Or I'm actually just a bit stressed with the job at the moment because I've got a new boss and, he or she is a bit toxic. And he's taking all my stress, all my energy just to hold myself together working in that situation. So that is not the time. That is not the time to make a career change. You need to have a more stable background going on. I've got a client at the moment. He's going through a very difficult divorce and he's got to move. And there's all these things going on. And he's delaying working with me. And, 6 months ago, I said, let's just pause this because I think you need to finalize your divorce and work out where you're going to live. And then we can work together. So he's come back about 8 months on and things are still not finalized in his life, but he wants to have a session. But I do feel he's like, I mean, it's useful for him, but he would have been better if we started when he was in a good headspace. But then other things are going on and he needs to make a change of career. But it's a tough time for him. I wouldn't want to be him with all the choices he's got going on. But, people will still work with a career coach when it's tough for them. But it's better. It's much better, when certain things are settled, because, the Holmes and Ross stress scale, you don't want too many stressful events happening in your life because then you're going to be ill and that's not going to help at all.
So it's something there about if you're going to make significant changes is doing that from a position of strength. The right time is when you're strong and when other bits and pieces are in place, not in the worst possible time is when everything's falling apart.
Yeah. When in my personal life, when I separated from my husband and then bought a flat in Cheltenham, if I was looking for a job, that would not have been the time to look for a job as well. It was like, let's sort out the money side of the separation. Let's settle and get your new home all set up and relax. And then if I'd wanted to think about a new job, not it all going on at once, because it's just too many balls in the air.
So what about kind of those small changes? So, maybe somebody says, actually, I'm quite happy, but I just need a little bit of a tweak.
Mm.
Or somebody who says, I haven't got this headspace for anything major. I just want to make a little bit of a tweak. So how does a 50-year-old make small tweaks in their career?
One of the first things that's useful to do is to work 80% of your capacity. Because so many of us, for all sorts of reasons, sometimes external pressure, sometimes we pressurize ourselves, we just work flat out all the time. We're putting in the overtime, we're working the longer hours, we're doing that bit more. And it's like not quite work to rule, but it's like let's just pull back a bit. And sometimes you need to do that over a period. You can't just go from doing lots extra to not very much at all. But that about you go home at the right time, clearly in some fields of medicine that's not possible. But I'm thinking of other clients I've worked with, and like twice a week, it was like one of them, he wants to start dancing. I can't remember what sort of dancing it was, Sarok or whatever. But it was like, well, twice a week you leave work so that you can go to your dance class. And it doesn't matter what is happening. You just got appointments that you need to make, and you don't even need to tell people why. And that just started to mean he had something else going on in his life. It wasn't just work. So you can start doing that. And I think often it's about letting things go. We can get really hung up about stuff that's going on in our industry. And, the organization, and frustrated with other people. And I think a really good thing is, just to let it go. This is not my problem. I can't change anything. I've tried to change things. It's not working. It's just upping my stress level. So, do some stuff for fun, at least twice a week. Maybe for somebody else, it's to go to the gym, but to make sure that you go and you do your hours of strength and then a swim and sauna, etc. And for somebody else, or possibly the same people, it's like, we have to let it go. We can't just try and take everything on. And saying no, it's really good to say no. And if you're in control of your diary, to write no in huge letters over it. And again, just thinking of somebody who is allied to the medical field, and other people were in control of her diary. So she'd have a half-hour appointment, like 12 till 12:30, and then another one, 12:30 till 1. And I said, oh, but when do you go to the loo, have a cup of tea? She said, well, you don't, because people have booked it up. I said, so what you've got to do is every time you see something go in your online diary, book 15 minutes. So you've got time to clear your head from one thing, do whatever personal stuff you need to do, and prepare for the next one. Because she was just running herself ragged. And she did that for a few weeks and then she forgot. And so, and she was one of my clients that I was sort of seeing ad hoc about monthly. And then every time she said, I'm so glad we meet monthly, because you just remind me to do it, because she forgets one day and then they send her to, overseas. But that is really good, because how can you do back-to-back appointments? At some point, you have to have time, to go to the loo. Definitely.
Yeah. And actually, it's when you do that, you're not at your best. You're not performing at your best, which then also becomes problematic, doesn't it?
Yeah. And sometimes, and in fact, I've got another client who I'm seeing later, and she said, just starting to think about some of the areas that we're going to be talking about this afternoon. She's already feeling better about her job, because she realizes there are things that she can do to change the current situation. And she's somebody who is going to make a career move. And it might take time, but I know every day I'm going to be a step closer. So she's really sweet the way, and she's, and she was somebody who was very, very upset about the work and how she wasn't getting promotion or anything. But it's like, we've now opened her eyes to these different things that she can do. And she's already feeling better just because she started thinking about making a change.
And actually, that focus on what you can do, whether that's career moves and also the things that stress you at work, that's really powerful, because so many of us spend so much of our headspace worrying about things that we have no influence over, and we forget to do anything about the stuff that we do have influence over. And, you know, we do have influence at work and we have influence over our personal careers. And we forget to focus on those things because all the time we're worrying about stuff that we don't have any influence over.
And yeah, and so often it's only when somebody mentions it or possibly hears this that they think, you know what, that's a good point. Because we get so caught up in life. And that's why it's really useful to take a step back. And I'm not got strong religious beliefs, but Sunday is a bit like my Sabbath. And I switch my phone literally off Saturday night when I go to bed. And I don't switch it on until Monday morning. I have a proper alarm clock. And it's really good to have a day when, you know, I'm not even reading, you know, my Sunday paper on the iPad. I'm not doing anything. And it just gives you a complete break. So I don't know how, I mean, I've only been doing this a few weeks now. So I'm hoping I can keep it up and sort of model it. But I think it is useful just to take a day of rest, to give your whole body a chance to relax and to do stuff that's good for your body, like, you know, go for a walk, go for a swim, or lift weights or whatever.
You're giving me ideas as well now. I'll bring us to a close, Denise, and sort of maybe if I could just ask you to summarize, you know, what would be your top tips for a 50+ doctor trying to make career decisions?
First of all, how are you currently feeling about the job? Is it something that it's so bad, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 2, you've got to make a move? Or is it like a 6 or a 7? So you're looking for the small tweaks. So first of all, it's like, where am I at? If you decide I need to make a radical move, do the things I was saying earlier, remind yourself of childhood, think about the things that interest you, begin to explore, maybe work with a career coach to get some ideas. And if it's a small tweak, then it's easier, possibly. But I think it's a step at a time to realize it's going to take some time, and just to have some nice stuff going on in your life to support you, because anytime we make a change, it's leading to more stress. So we just need to balance that. And if you're living with somebody, you know, you've got a partner, husband, wife, whatever, get them on board. If you've still got children living at home, get them on board, because you want support from your family. And if you are thinking about something that's going to affect your finances, then you do need to probably talk about it with the people that are going to be affected by it, because they may be really supportive. But if they're not, and the first thing they know is suddenly your income's dropped by 75%, yeah, that, and I do know of a person that did that, and then the partner left. This wasn't somebody that worked with me, but I just heard, you know, meeting them elsewhere, and it was like, that's a really radical way of doing things. But I said nothing, because, you know, it wasn't for me to say I'd have done things differently, because they'd already made the decisions.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Denise.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.